What's up, Taiwan? I'm Laurel Stewart with the news from here in Taiwan and around the world. Taiwan is pushing through relief measures in response to Washington's 20% levy on most of the country's exports. The government has repeatedly said the current rate is only temporary as trade negotiations continue. But as Leslie Liao reports, businesses here are already feeling the strain.
Temporary. That's how Taiwan has described U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs on Taiwan. Most of the country's goods have been slapped with a reciprocal 20% duty. That 20% goes on top of any existing tariffs that various businesses already pay. The government has emphasized that negotiations are still underway, and there's room for the levy to be lowered. But there's still no time frame for when the negotiations will be completed. One of Taiwan's most valuable exports to the U.S. is semiconductors, and Trump may slap even heftier tariffs on chips under Section 232. That statute authorizes the president to place import taxes on specific goods that impact national security after an investigation. Taiwan's negotiators say they want to reconcile both Taiwan's reciprocal and Section 232 tariffs at the same time.
目前我们还没有完全取得台美最后的这个共识，最主要的原因，也就是我们希望可以争取把232的这个调查内容，特别是对于半导体这一个调查，可以纳入对等关税的这个谈判一并去处理。
Trump's tariffs kicked in last week, and local businesses are already feeling their effects. The cabinet says that it's going to propose adding $1.5 billion in additional relief funding to a special budget.
那这一次提高的450亿元，主要会用在强化电力系统，还有加强弱势的一个照顾与关怀。第三的话就是发放现金的一个作业。那因应现在的局势快速的一个相关变化，会预留200亿元，当作未来支持产业还有扩大补助的一个范畴。
Any cabinet spending proposal requires legislative approval. The opposition had revised the special budget before, modifying it from what the cabinet initially proposed. But that was before Trump's tariffs kicked in. Now that the tariffs are here and in effect, there's added urgency to make sure the government gets money to where it's needed most. Howard Zhang and Leslie Liao for TaiwanPlus.
US authorities have reportedly hidden location trackers in shipments of export-controlled chips to detect illegal smuggling to China. A Reuters report says trackers have been concealed in shipments from Dell and Supermicro, containing advanced chips from NVIDIA and AMD. It says they're being used to build cases against people and firms skirting US export controls that are meant to keep advanced AI tech out of China. NVIDIA says it does not install secret trackers in its products, while Dell says it was not aware of US government initiatives to embed them in its shipments. Supermicro says it does not disclose its security practices, and AMD did not respond to a request for comment. For more on how this could impact US-China AI competition, reporter Chris Gorin spoke to Taylor Radjic from the Center for Strategic and International Studies.
Taylor, I want to start by getting a reaction to this Reuters report that the U.S. is embedding tracking devices in shipments of export-controlled chips in order to prevent smuggling or diversion into China. Do you consider this to be an escalation in terms of enforcing export controls?
Definitely. I think it's moved to a more covert surveillance side of this. It's also come at a time where obviously the NVIDIA announcement in the last few days has also escalated this as well. I think that the tech competition between China and particularly in terms of export controls and semiconductors has reached a new level that it wasn't at before. And it's definitely an escalation of enforcement of export controls as well.
Does embedding these tracking devices work well? Do you consider it to be an effective strategy to prevent these chips from getting into China?
I think so. I definitely think it's not the perfect strategy, but it's definitely a step in the right direction in enforcing these export controls. The idea of it has been around for a while. The Chip Security Act that was introduced a few months ago definitely spoke about location tracking of, these specific chips. to kind of really get to the point of chip smuggling and the issue of it that clearly are falling through the gaps with the existing export control regime that's in place.
This news comes as NVIDIA is trying to clinch a deal on selling its H20 chip in China, even offering to pay 15% of its China sales to the US government. China, meanwhile, is telling its companies not to buy NVIDIA and to buy Chinese instead, saying that American chips have backdoors and pose a national security risk. How do you think this news moves the needle on the H20 debate?
It's a really interesting point for China now, and it either has the decision to continue to use the H20 chips and rely on US tech, which may be at a more advanced level, or if they sort of continue this alternate route of using what might be good enough but not better with the sort of national security concerns that they have. And I think that this is an interesting crossroads for them, and I think that the actions that they take after this will be pretty indicative of how they're going to continue down this route. Personally, I think that they will continue to buy the H20 chips. It was specifically designed for the Chinese market, so it meets their needs.
That was Taylor Radjic from CSIS. European leaders are hopeful US President Donald Trump will push Russian President Vladimir Putin for a ceasefire in Ukraine during a meeting on Friday. That's after earlier concerns Trump might propose concessions from Kyiv, such as land swaps with Russia. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz said recognition of Russia's occupation of Ukrainian lands is not open to debate. Russia has been advancing into Ukraine in recent days. Trump has said if he's not happy with the outcome of the meeting, there may not be a second one. Advocates in Taiwan are calling for better recognition of the country's comfort women under Japanese rule. It comes as people around the world are marking a day to remember women who were forced into sex slavery during World War II. Tiffany Wong reports.
请默哀。
Here at the Amma Museum in Taipei, a moment of silence for the country's comfort women, those who were forced into sex slavery by Japan during World War II. August 14th marks the International Memorial Day for Comfort Women, and it's also the 80th year since the end of World War II. Taiwan had a complicated role in that conflict, fighting as a colony of Japan, and after its surrender, being incorporated into the Republic of China, an allied combatant. An estimated 200 Taiwanese young women and girls were recruited as comfort women during the war. The Taipei Women's Rescue Foundation has collected the narratives of over 50 of them, whom they call Amma, or grandmother in Taiwanese Taigi, as their existence wasn't revealed until decades after the war, when they were already seniors. The last of these women died in 2023. Now the foundation is calling for improved education about Taiwan's comfort women for young students.
战争已经落幕了，但是对于受害的阿嬷而言，他们的创伤跟追寻正义的旅程从来没有停止。同时，这件事是台湾历史的一部分。我们认为人民有权利要知道这段历史的真相。
They are also pushing for Taiwan to have a museum dedicated to women's history and women's rights. The National Human Rights Commission did not respond to TaiwanPlus's request for comment on the foundation's demands. By sharing these Amma stories, these advocates hope to shed light on the atrocities of World War II and place responsibility on Taiwan's government to promote equal rights to ensure the memory of the country's comfort women is not lost to history. Luffy Li and Tiffany Wong in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
A Taipei court has upheld the sentences for 3 ex-military police officers convicted of selling electronic warfare secrets to China. One other officer's prison time was slightly reduced. The 4 admitted to transferring the classified information between 2022 and 2024 in return for up to $22,000 US. They each received initial sentences of between 5 and 7 years. All 4 appealed, but only one, a former military police sergeant at the presidential office, had their sentence reduced by a single month to 6 years, 7 months. A further appeal is still possible. The landmark trial for Hong Kong pro-democracy media tycoon Jimmy Lai is in limbo as heavy storms force delays. Lai could get life in prison if convicted of charges under Beijing's controversial national security law. The 77-year-old has been detained since December 2020, with many countries and rights groups calling for his release. US President Donald Trump has vowed to free Lai, a stance the White House still maintains. The trial's restart date is unclear as Typhoon Podul puts the city in standstill. Typhoon Podul has moved away from Taiwan's west coast, but it's left wreckage in areas already reeling from 2 recent storms. Irene Lin reports.
Blustery winds whip down the roads of Pingdong in southeastern Taiwan, sending rooftops flying and cutting off electricity. Podul, the 3rd typhoon to hit Taiwan this season, has left a trail of damage in this corner of the country. While the tropical southeast is used to big storms like this one, people here say they're tired of the bad weather repeatedly interrupting their daily lives.
因为我们是做生意啦，怕东西会坏掉啊。这边是算是灾区啊，每一次的那个台风一过境，就是交通就瘫了。
因为我好久以前遇到这个台风的时候，有的时候会停电，然后我自己自备发电机。
After making landfall on Wednesday morning, Typhoon Podul dropped about 300 millimeters of rain across the eastern counties of Hualien, Taidong, and Pingdong. Strong wind and rain knocked many of the country's remaining pomelos and custard apples off their branches, only weeks before the optimal harvest period.
像现在这样的话，几乎是都没有被收成了。
不仅是即将成熟的是落果啊，我们在开花的部分也是全部都打掉了。
As Typhoon Podul passed through the region later in the afternoon, it also set back recovery efforts in Dinshan village in the southern county of Tainan, which had been hard hit by the 2 storms in July, with high winds blowing off temporary roofs.
政府有讲要来要来种梅河啊，梅河来酿10几届啊，来酿10几工啊，酿到真吼含报价都无。
It's been a turbulent typhoon season for these residents. With more storms expected, there is mounting uncertainty over when life will finally get back to normal. Justin Wu and Irene Lin for TaiwanPlus.
Indigenous communities in eastern Taiwan are using their traditional gardening techniques to preserve local biodiversity. Chelsea Wu looks at how.
In remote parts of Hualien in eastern Taiwan, indigenous Bunong communities are keeping a special tradition alive, called Pisan Lavan, or family garden. It's a form of home gardening that helps preserve rare and diverse bean varieties.
从小就是有吃，尤其是我们煮小米的时候啊，还是要做什么，这个豆类一定都有。
In Pisan Lavan, some beans are grown along the edges of farmlands, while others are planted near homes. In 2014, when the Cixing Organic Agriculture Foundation began helping farmers switch to organic practices, they unexpectedly uncovered over 20 rare and ancient bean varieties thriving in these backyard gardens.
这么久以前的种子，然后一代一代一直还有人在种，然后持续的更新它的活性，然后让它在土壤里面生存，记忆每一天的太阳，每一天的雨。
To keep the knowledge of how to grow these beans, they set up the Bunong Bean Group, aiming to pass down the community's agricultural wisdom. Conservation takes place directly in the fields, with replanting every year, but modernization is threatening their efforts.
年轻人现在有的都是还在外面工作，就是怕说他们不肯做啊，不肯种这些啊，这个一定要种才有成果啊，你没有种下去，它怎么会有？
Members of the Bunong Bean Group remain hopeful that their agricultural know-how and traditions can be handed down to younger generations. Much like the beans they cultivate, the tradition will take root in everyday life, flourishing for years to come. Alex Chen and Chelsea Wu for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. Before we go, check out these animals staying cool at the Rome Zoo. I'm Laurel Stewart. Take care and see you next time.